Wow, I feel official. Okay, welcome. And I don't have a copy of the agenda in front of me, but I believe we do the minutes first and then we do the public forum, or do the public forum first? Minutes first, okay. The minutes were sent out to everybody. Everybody had a chance to review them?
Yes.
So I'll accept the motion to approve.
I'll make that motion.
Do we have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
The motion is approved. Okay, and I did steal the agenda. Jeff, do you need this? I stole your agenda. Oh, okay, thank you. Oh, okay. All right, we'll start off with, I believe we have a public forum, and that's, is it Karen? Yeah. You can go to the podium if you'd like to speak.
Okay. Wow, this feels very official. My name is Kasia Allen, and I live on 68 Bellata Way. I've been here since 2003, even though the city of Fitchburg states that my house was built in 2002. That's not true. I am here to petition for an abatement of the sewer portion of my bill for 1.5 months, on the basis of the fact that there was absolutely no intent in the water usage that happened. There was an issue with my sprinkler system, and I'm going to speak to that. So overall, we're a very frugal family and very conscientious about our water usage. Our average water sewer bill is around $50. And we actually purchased a new washer and dryer in February, and our bills dropped to $30. Actually, my last bill is also $32. In the middle of June, I got a bill for $678.24. So as you can imagine, that really was a shock. I called, so that was middle of June. I right away turned off the sprinkler system thinking it must have something to do with this. I had the water person come to check the water meter to make sure there's nothing wrong with it. We've had the sprinkler system since 2011. We do not have a separate meter, and that was a conscious decision on our part. We have a finished basement, and it would take ripping into walls to have another one put in. We just decided that we're going to use it sparingly, and we've been using it in the same manner since 2011. So now, 10 years later, this happens. First, the water guy comes to make sure there's no issue with the meter. He says, no, there's just hours and hours of water usage on a regular basis. So I then have, I've been in contact with Mr. Murawski, and I had the guy that installed our sprinkler system, he came and took a look at this. And I guess the argument that I got back was, he couldn't locate an issue with this. And it's true. He said, there's no leak. I can't see anything. He's like, can I tell for sure that there isn't something wrong with it? No. He's like, you have to try using it after I reset it, which he reset it. He couldn't pinpoint an issue. Have I used it since? No, because I'm still trying to figure out this whole bill situation. I am the kind of person that pays bills ahead of time. I'm now behind by hundreds and hundreds of dollars. It makes me feel very uncomfortable. But at the same time, I just feel like I can prove beyond a reasonable doubt that there was no intent in having that water be out there, and for me to then just come and say, I just don't want to pay for it. I want to pay for all the water. I actually paid for all the water already. And I just want to see if there's any way that I can have that sewer portion just excused for that 1.5 months. I didn't realize it. Do I feel that anybody owes this to me? Absolutely not. I just feel that on a human level, I just don't see which part of my story is not adding up as the truth that speaks to the fact that it's $533.41 that I'm asking to forgive. So on the first bill of $637.57, I paid $240. The water portion of that was $200. I just rounded up and estimated and added $40 for the sewer. On the second bill that came for that half month before I turned this thing off, It was 235, no, yes, I paid 100, again, $70 was water, and I just rounded up. Again, sewer still above and beyond what I normally pay. And then the last month's bill, I paid in full, $32.26. So I don't know what else can I say other than just ask that you try to understand that this just, there was no ill will, there was no desire to just pour the water out there and then not take responsibility for it. I've been here since 2003, have had the sprinkler system since 2011. Look at my entire history of my bills and point to one that was, I don't know, a day late, or one that was over whatever amount of money. I just would like to see if there is anything that can be done. Thank you.
Could you explain, does anybody have questions for? I guess I just brief, oh, good, Mike.
I apologize, because the echo, I can't really
I
even
know.
understand what you're saying. Not your fault, building by design, right? There's a lot of reverb and,
Yeah.
so how many months was there an overage?
Just a month and a half, because literally the month that it happened, then the bill doesn't come till 2 weeks later, right? So the moment I got the second bill, I was already
Okay.
2 weeks into the second month.
Okay.
That's when I realized the
And they have 1
second,
meter,
1 meter, yes.
no pool,
No.
okay. And what was the issue? It was, there was a leak in the irrigation
No, so
system?
there's no leak, like so the water guy that came, he said that he saw, the meter tells the story of like hours and hours of water pouring out. That's not the setting that was intended. We've had the same setting on this thing since 2011. So apparently something happened to where all the zones were just like pouring out for hours and hours. And my husband is at work, he goes to work at like, he leaves at 4:30. I work from home with like air conditioning on and headset on the whole day. I don't look out there timing sprinkler systems.
So you don't know where the issue was,
No,
and it just went away?
no, it didn't go away. Like I literally stopped it. The guy came and he did a reset, and he said the only way we'll know if it's fixed is if I watch it, and I just don't want to put it on until I figure this out, because you know what I'm saying? I'm sitting here on like hundreds of dollars worth
Okay,
of
so he reset the what?
the sprinkler system clock.
Okay. Okay, so the sprinkler system, the problem was the sprinkler system was running much more than it should have.
That is correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Was there any indication, just out of curiosity, I mean, you put a lot of water on that lawn.
I know.
I mean, I looked at, I think I saw I mean, every single day you're putting hundreds and hundreds of gallons on the.
No, I know, but
on the
how
lawn.
would you, like, how do you feel that I should know
I mean,
it?
was your lawn, I'm curious, I can't imagine your lawn wouldn't have been saturated.
No, like I don't, no, we were not even spending that much time outside. I don't know what to tell you. Like I really, we didn't notice it. That's all I can say. Just did not notice it. And I mean, literally the second that we did, we turned it off. Like, obviously if I noticed it sooner, I would do something about it. When I called the Water Commission or Division or, the lady sent me a link to something where I can now check and monitor. I was not aware of that even existing. Why would I? For all these years, this has never been an issue, and nothing has changed. Like, we've changed nothing in how we operate. And no, that's a lie. I did get a new washer and dryer. We're now $20 less than our normal bill on a regular month. $32.26, a family of 3, laundry every day. It just
Do you have
feels...
another question?
Yeah. If I could just ask a couple other questions. Approximately how many sprinkler heads do you have?
Well, that's a husband question.
Yes. Between over 10?
I know there are zones and heads, and
Okay. That's no problem. Do you have them in the front yard?
there are some in the front yard, yes.
Okay.
We're on a hill, like a very, very steep hill. I don't know if you know Bellota Way. there's no water pooling anywhere because we're like this. Our driveway's like this, our yard is like this. We never ever get water pooling anywhere ever, even after the biggest rain we've ever had. There's never an issue because we are on the side of a hill.
Are there sprinkler heads all around the property, front, side, and rear?
Yes, there are not a lot of them in the back. I think there's just like, they're not all the way down because again, we're on a hill, just on the flat part, I think, of the back.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jeff, you've been the one from staff that would have responded to this. Do you want to give us your analysis and what you felt what our rules and regs are?
The current abatement policy has been in effect since July of 2016, and that policy does preclude outside uses of water with the exception of swimming pools as abatable conditions. So that was the first factor in reviewing this particular case. The second factor, in the course of conversations and correspondences, it seemed that there was a possibility that there could have been a broken component of the controller system. Had that been the case, I believe that I would have pursued some form of relief if there was a broken component, in the same way that if we had a broken water tube that from a burst situation or a failed water heater, if there were a failed component that were to be the cause, I would have considered that, and there wasn't really anything that supported that as a fault for the condition. The last consideration that I had in the decision was this was not just a day or two of this type of use. This was going on for most of the month of May. I think it was starting about the May 11th, and then it was the receipt of the bill that was the alert to the condition instead of a monitoring of the operation of the system. So in my mind, that just appeared to be a form of negligent operation of the system. So those are the three primary deciding factors that led me to the denial decision.
Thanks, Jeff. Anybody have questions for Jeff?
I just have a question more for John. So with the new water meters, could we look into the usage history in such a fashion that would let us identify whether it was the sprinkler system overnight that was causing the excess water use or some other factor?
We have to download the data. We'll have a chart here that shows daily basis.
Okay.
We could actually download it, see what was going on that year, and that's what the house download that, so we could see whether it was kept going off and on, it's going on for hours on end. See the time of the day, that would be helpful.
I mean, usually sprinkler systems are set to run overnight, right? So that's, between like 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. is the ideal watering time. So it is conceivable that if there was a problem with the sprinkler system controller, that it might not have been identified by the resident until they noticed the water bill. So just a statement for consideration.
Yeah, it might be worthwhile downloading that data to see what was going on, and be able to look at it a little bit more. What we have here is just the daily usage. That doesn't tell us what was going on on an hourly basis and the time sprinkler had going on.
Okay.
We might be able to correlate that with what the original settings were for the sprinkler system, what time it's supposed to go off at well at a different time, or something happened there, so.
I mean, I personally have an irrigation system and I have it set to run between 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. If there was a problem, the only way I'd know is by going in and looking at the data in my controller, which happens to be a smart controller. And I would recommend investing in a smart controller so you can see these issues potentially if they arise in the future. But that's kind of beside the point.
Do you know what hours it was set to go off originally, or?
No, like I don't do the setting, and I just have a reaction to two parts of the statement. One, I really have a strong reaction to being called negligent because I really don't feel that that's a fair accusation. And I also would like to say that calling a system confirmed as unbroken is also not a correct statement, because the guy that came, he said that there's nothing that he can see, but he cannot say for sure that something in a system that's been there since 2011 and has not, like, no magic has been happening to it. It's like, it's an older system, right? And are you right? Like, should I probably now look and invest in something new? Yes, will I? Probably. I just have to take care of this first. So no, I'm not negligent. And no, nobody can say with absolute certainty that this thing wasn't broken. He wasn't able to pinpoint anything, but those machines are not something that he can, with his eyeballs right away, 100% say, this is or isn't broken. He did a reset. He said, that's all I can do, and now you have to just test drive it. Am I willing to test drive it now, given this? No, I wanted the thing to normalize so I can come here and show you where things are at when this is not being touched at all. Was I willing to play with it when I don't know what's going on? Absolutely not. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess we have two choices. We can make a motion and deal with this now, or if people would be more comfortable seeing the data from the timing on this and make a decision next month, it's up to the commission. I'll accept the motion, or what's your wishes? Any thoughts?
I guess the first question would be, do the bylaws allow us to grant relief? Because I know they changed recently.
Well, when you say bylaws, you're referring to the city code and not to the policy that's in effect that the commission approved.
Technicality, can you describe the difference, please? Sorry. Historically, Jeff, we've done this. You know, we've had this type of appeal before. Really, I think I've been doing this for a long time. I think I've seen one or two. Is there any precedent that you can help us with?
There was only one instance of a irrigation system where there was actually a freeze burst in the winter months, and when the system was initiated by the programming of the system, it had excessive water use that was escaping off the burst. That was the case that abatement was granted, and affected 2 consecutive bill periods.
So I would just suggest that if we're willing to grant an abatement based on a burst pipe, which is a failed component of the sprinkler system, and in this case, the claim is that the controller itself was failed and that caused the excess water use, that's also a failed component of the sprinkler system. If we're being consistent, I would lean towards granting the abatement, but we don't have any definitive proofs that the controller is the issue right now, other than just the sprinkler contractor coming out and saying that he suggests that that's maybe the issue. But without really verifying that that's the case and the sprinkler system ran when it wasn't supposed to, we don't really have any way of knowing for sure. I mean, those systems, they are kind of a set it and forget it type system. You know, if you've got your program set up and it's worked for 10 years, why would you think that next year would be any different when you go to turn it on? So, you know, I can kind of see both sides of this, you know, Jeff's viewpoint and the residents.
Did you do any work in your yard this year before doing that? Anything that would have disturbed you?
I mean, we did, now I don't remember if it was this year or last year, because, you know, the last year has been crazy. We did add on the side, my son is now a driver, he's 16, so we added a thing on the side to park the car, so there was some work around and they had to move one of the heads.
Yeah.
But that was not at play, according to Greg, who did the check. So, but yes, there was.
It wasn't damaged or anything?
Not that he saw when
Okay.
he did his check.
Obviously, the one that has been torn out, but that water could go someplace that you don't see each time.
Right, and if the system will just shut off after it was discovered, we wouldn't know if it's a controller or a leak in that fashion. But either way, it seems like a fault of the system itself. You know, something is wrong with the system, whether it's a break that isn't being seen when the sprinkler's running, or if it's the controller itself.
Okay, well, we need to move this along, sorry. I'm sorry, guys, I need a motion to grant the requested abatement, a motion to table it pending further information, or a motion to deny. What's your pleasure?
I'm okay to move ahead with the vote.
Okay, but I need a motion to vote on. Someone needs to make a motion. We either approve, I need a motion to approve the abatement, a motion to deny the abatement, or a motion to put this off pending further information. One of the three.
If there are board members that need more information, then we should have a continuance, right?
Does anybody want?
And if not, then we can move to
Yeah.
vote.
Yeah, I'll accept any motion.
I would motion to download the water use data and dig into it a little further, just to be certain.
We'll postpone this to next meeting.
And just to comment on that, excuse me, is the data going to matter when the water came out of the spigot?
I guess if we can definitively tie it to the irrigation system and a broken component of the irrigation system, then that would be consistent with past practice.
We could actually look at the flow rates that were going.
It wouldn't be consistent with past practice. It would be consistent, there's no consistency with past decisions. I think there was a comment made that it was, a decision was made in the past.
It would be
There are many
consistent with
decisions
that
that-
decision.
Were denied as well,
Right.
so.
It would be consistent with that decision. If an abatement was granted in the past for the sprinkler system being broken, and in this case, the sprinkler system is broken, and we can identify that with this data that we haven't seen yet, then my feelings would be that we would be better serving the resident, being consistent with that past ruling to abate a broken sprinkler system. Then we'll have to deal with that when we
Then we'll
get
vote on
there.
it. It sounds to me like, if I'm getting a consensus, I would like more information.
Somebody-
Okay,
I want
so
all board members, obviously, to be
Yeah.
comfortable with.
is everybody comfortable that we gather this information, we vote on this next month? Okay, if everybody's comfortable with that,
So make a motion to move the vote to the next meeting.
I have a motion, do I have a second? Second. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Mrs. Allen, be present for the next month as well.
Excuse me? She doesn't need to be present. I think we've heard hers, unless she has any additional information, we don't need you to be here. We'll respond to you in writing.
So in the meantime, I will not be charged any penalties for not paying that, right? I made sure
There's no
that I
reason to
paid
charge.
all those estimates.
Can we-
I just
is
don't
there a way
want to
we
be
can-
delinquent.
State law basically requires.
Okay. We're sorry, our hands are tied on so many of these things, and that's our difficulty.
Right now, you know, we can't. If the lot gets abated, then the interest will be abated, but the interest for basically.
I'm sorry, John, I can't hear you with the mask.
If you decide the next meeting to abate it,
Yeah.
then that interest can go away with it, but if you don't abate it, then interest will have to stay with it.
Okay. Okay, we're bound by whatever the state rules are as well.
It's state law, not anything that the city, controls, so.
And I guess I'm not really clear as to what the data is going to.
It'll tell us, like, I'll be able to download later, I'll have to look at, I haven't looked at this myself, when I was out for a while, but, I can look at the, gallons per minute and what would each head would produce and see if there was something odd going on. If each head was a couple gallons a minute spraying and you had 20 gallons a minute going on, then I would say something broke someplace. We also can see the duration that it was running, and maybe you can speak with your husband and see what the settings were originally to go off of. It was 5 to 6 in the morning and whatever, and you can see if it was going off at other times during the day, because that will be able to tell us that.
Do you need any extra system information, like the number of heads?
Yeah, I think it's useful just to have an idea of the number of heads and
Okay, so should I email that information to somebody?
That'll be fine.
Yeah. I'll put together a list of questions and I'll email you. I'll get the email from Jeff. I'm in charge of the water department. And then we'll be out the next day or so, download that data and look at that, so, okay?
Sounds like fun. Thank you.
Yep.
I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Okay, let's see, Water Division. John, what do you got?
All right, I guess I'll come up here. The first item, 245 River Street, we're just going to table that for now, if that's okay. Vinny was going to come and speak to that, but he's had a death in the family, so the city solicitor won't be able to attend, so we'd like to just skip over that for now.
At 245 Water Street?
River Street,
What business is it, just for the record?
that's whether the issue was with the metering, where the meter that we originally installed was faulty.
What business?
It's the housing development there on
Yeah,
River Street, the old corrugated box factory.
Where Center Pizza, that whole complex there. What's it called?
Seaboard Box, I think is what it was called.
Yeah,
I've drawn a blank on what it's called now.
yeah.
Not
we just call-
Fitchburg Yarn Works, but the other
It's all
development
under
there.
245 River Street LLC or whatever, so. But it's where Center Pizza is, that's that whole residential complex there. There was an issue with the meter. All right.
Thank you.
River Street?
Yep, River Street.
Yeah, it was on, we had it on the agenda before, and it went to the city solicitor, and it's kind of coming around again, so. All right, any other questions on that?
Nope.
Mike, I'll forward the background information to you on it tomorrow, so you have that, so.
I can't understand half of what anybody's saying, so.
Yeah, the acoustics in here are awful, aren't they?
Is it better without the mask?
Well, that was my question, will we be punished by Charlie Baker if the speaker removes their mask?
That's what I was wondering, because I mean,
Because that
when
is
you,
better, it is better when you don't have your mask on.
okay. We'll
I
just,
can understand you a little bit.
all right. I've been vaccinated, I feel very good, so. All right, just an update on some projects I have going on, the citywide meter project. We're about 94% complete now. We've installed or replaced 10,675 meters, and we about 670 left to go. Out of those 670, we have about 200 that have issues with service lines, old iron pipe, or something with internal plumbing that we gotta help the owners work through on those. It may be some expensive projects for some of the people that, the owners of those properties. We have about 370 or so that are no response, that we're actually working through now, sending out shut-off notices, just trying to get those done 10 to 12 a week. And that's been particularly effective, of course. So usually each week, we give everybody 2 weeks notice that the service will be shut off, you don't let us in for the meter. And that's all based on the city regulations, city code allowing us to inspect their meter and, make sure it's functioning. So it's all, within the city code that we're applying to those shut-offs. So, and most people are pretty good. They just, they're putting it off to the very end and, busy with their lives and things like that, and hadn't really read any of the notices. So I anticipate that it'll probably take till through the end of next year to get them all done, especially with the people that, may lack the funds to replace their service lines. We're going to look at trying to help them out in any way that we can. Otherwise, the public forum that we just had was a great example of our Water Smart customer portal. People can sign up for that, and they can be notified. They can set, how much water, they're using, how much excess might be, something they'd want to get a warning about, or a leak or something like that. It's a great tool for somebody that, will catch something like this before it goes too far. And we know that people it's actually helped a number of people already, so.
Help me personally. I'm just wondering, what do we do to publicize that?
Every time somebody calls with something, we give it to them. We sent out notifications, multiple notifications on our website. We don't have as much people sign up for it as we'd like to, but we really, and that's why I mentioned now, it's really important tool because it can really save somebody a lot of money with just a simple sign up there. And if they just call the water division, we'll help them get, an account set up and show them how, tell them how, how they, set up their criteria, that they want to look for. But, somebody who goes away for a week, and we have somebody that'll, that's watching their house and the toilet gets flushed and that toilet gets stuck and just keeps going. They could get notified of a leak of that, and somebody could go back to the house and check it and just, or, a washing machine hose burst or something like that. And then if you're using, say you're using 200 gallons a day, and you're never going to use any more than that, really, you could set, a notification at 300 gallons a day, just in case it goes over. So all of a sudden a toilet sticking, or maybe an outside faucet starts leaking, you'll get a notice of that, and it'll save you a tremendous amount of money, especially if it goes unnoticed for quite a while.
If I don't know what it costs for us to do an insert with the bills. I mean, if we considered, I think we did that in the beginning. I don't know.
Yeah, no, we can do that again.
Consider repeating.
We've done it a couple times, and like I said, we've tried to get it out there as much as possible.
We could probably do a Facebook post through the mayor's office too.
Yeah, we've done a couple of those in the past. We haven't done anything recently, but we can do that. So, but yeah, just like I said, I want to speak to that because it's something that could really save people hundreds of dollars, maybe even thousands. Never mind the damage that could happen in their house if it was a burst, washing machine hose on a second floor or, in a finished area. I mean, they got notified that while they're at work during the day, the washing machine hose goes, it could, save a lot of damage as well as, the cost of the utility itself, so. Great tool, it really is. And anybody just call the water department, and we'll help them get set up on that and give them all the information, so, and we will send out some more notice and do the Facebook post on that, so. Next project we have is the Falula Water Transmission Main Project. It's the new transmission main between the Falula plant on Ridge Road and the tanks, the upsizing of that from 16-inch to 24-inch. It's been a little bit, getting the contract signed, taking a bit of a time, but one issue that we've come across is that they're unable to get pipe as quickly as they would like. So even though the contractor, knows he's getting the award, he hasn't ordered the pipe until he actually has everything signed. But having said that, the 24-inch pipe is just not available sitting around, not that much of it. So they're anticipating not starting until probably, just before winter. So that wouldn't really pose a problem, but we will have to ask DEP for an extension because we're supposed to have that project done by the end of the year. So and I've already informed DEP of that, and they understand. Just it's hard getting some materials, particularly in larger quantities, metal, pipe, the ductile iron, the fittings and things like that, valves. So. The SCADA project, upgrading all the, control systems and computer systems. The contractor, Fall River Electrical, has been working on that, assembling the electrical, boxes and things like that and getting those fabricated. The software is being programmed and things like that, so it's moving along. Still there's some supply issues there with some of the PLCs, programmable logic controllers. Some of those aren't as available as quickly as we would like to. The chip shortage that everybody's, experiencing some hardship over has impacted that a bit too. So, but it is progressing, and we're particularly excited about that and the improvements that'll bring to our efficiency and operation in the water division as far as running all our facilities as well as security for those as well. So, and the last thing I just want to mention, the projects that we're going to have coming up for next year is the replacement of the Oak Hill tank, which is up by the cell tower, up behind the golf course, up by the golf course. That as well as a rehabilitation of the Meeting House Gatehouse, which is the gatehouse at Meeting House Reservoir. That's the last reservoir before the regional plant in Westminster, and is a very critical component of our infrastructure. So we did apply for SRF funding for that, which is low or 0% loans, and there may be even some loan forgiveness. So we put in for those two projects because those are projects that DEP, has put on our list to get done, and that makes us, more rank higher as far as being able to get the funding when they, when they say, you got to do it, well, we're going to help you get the money to do it too. So those are a couple things that, we're working on. The the consultant, Western Sampson Engineers, has actually already started on the design of the Oak Hill tank. It'll be a pre-stressed concrete tank, replacing the old one up there. And then all the tanks, storage tanks in the city will be, the other ones are getting older. We're going to do some coating, cleaning and recoating of those and some, repairs, but they're in very good condition otherwise. So we're going to do some upkeep as part of that same project and bid it all together, because it's the same type of contractor that does the Oak Hill tank will also, do those work on those other tanks. So we want to make sure that the city spent a lot of money on those tanks. The ones that were built up by the Fluid plant at Overlook, and up at the Scott system off of Ashby West. We're going to make sure that, we maintain those and that, they're good for, 100 years anyway. So, and that's pretty much all that I have. I just wanted to give those updates. There's nothing that really, needed to be decided or anything like that for this evening. But if there's any other questions, I'd be happy to answer on those items.
Any questions for John?
Is Overlook tank utilized?
What's that?
The Overlook tank utilized?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a very critical tank in our system. It basically is the reservoir at that end of the city. We have 2 1 million gallon storage tanks at the plant in Westminster at Regional. So that flows down in, but we also have storage there. So if there's a large water main break, a fire or something like that, we have a lot of water to put into the city's system. So I know some people's pressures get affected, but we don't drain everything down. Without those tanks, we wouldn't be able to. At the same time, particularly with a fire, we have all kinds of water at higher pressure in that system. If we had a little tank, they could, drain that quickly, but that tank is 1.5 million gallons, and it's 2/3 full at least all the time. So basically goes between 20 and 30 feet, just to get turnover and fluctuation in that water level. But yeah, it's a critical component, and one of the reasons that we're able to recover so quickly after a water main break and get water back to areas is because of that tank, as well as the tanks up to the regional plant. So
Thank you.
you're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Jeff, what do you got? Thank you. I printed it out, too. What everything else was that?
First agenda on wastewater is second of the meeting. Has to do with the ordinance. Sorry. The microphone here. Concerns the ordinance update. This has been something that's been ongoing for quite a while. After we had gotten city council approval of the updated ordinance, we had notified both Westminster and Lunenburg of their IMA obligations to update their respective ordinances. In the case of Westminster, they have a town bylaw chapter. And Westminster actually sent along their draft updated bylaws back in the early part of 2011, and I was able to do the review, give them feedback, and they had their updated ordinance approved at town meeting, and that was on April 27th. Lunenburg was straggling a little bit behind, and we had offered them time extension just as a understanding grace that there's a lot of effort that goes into this sort of thing. So it was actually in June this year. Obviously, we didn't have a meeting in June, but they did provide their draft sewer use regulations. So I've given that an initial skim through, and I don't see anything that's major. I will be giving them some feedback comments on things to address and correct, but it appears that that should be able to be addressed, and I should be able to provide them feedback prior to our next meeting in October. The next item on the agenda is Something I'm not used to either. This is a case where city councilors prepared a petition and submitted it to council, and then council in turn delegated it to the Water and Wastewater Commission meeting, Water and Wastewater Commission. And this had to do, whoops, I'm not sure if FATV can hear me, but if they can, whoop, I see it on one screen but not the other. The language of the petition reads, Councilors Paul Boschman and Samantha Squalia to petition the city to conduct a study to investigate the possibility of transporting sludge in-house by a wastewater department instead of outsourcing this task. For the duration of my time since I've been Deputy Commissioner of Wastewater, this has been a contracted service. Through the earliest parts of my term, it's been Charles George that had this contract. It's a service contract where they would be providing roll-off bins for us to process our solids byproducts of wastewater treatment. Now that comes from the screens, so we have screenings in the headworks. That gets washed and then deposited into these roll-off bins. We also have both primary sludge and secondary sludge, which gets processed and then ultimately dewatered by our Fornia presses. And you probably remember from the tour of the treatment plant that it falls down into these bins looking like cake or topsoil. So that material is another form of solids that we have to properly dispose of. Unfortunately, this material is still hazardous in the sense that there are pathogens that are still active within that material. So we can't simply land apply it as it currently is. So that's why we've, for the entirety of my time in this position, we've transported and disposed of this material at the Fitchburg Westminster landfill on Route 31 in Westminster.
How many a day?
We do 3 containers a day on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, I believe, and then 2 containers on Friday. Where we don't process these is on weekends or on major holidays, and I'll get into what that means a little bit later.
Before we get too thick in the woods, I see that there was a major price increase.
Right, and that was really the driver that was motivating the councilors to submit this petition. We've had an unfortunate turn where we haven't had competitive bidding in recent bid solicitations for this service.
Why?
I can't explain it. The chief procurement officer is optimistic that in the future competitiveness will come back to this arena. But right now, for whatever reason, this particular type of service is not being sought after in a competitive way. So unfortunately, this vendor that has been providing this service to us hasn't been competing against anyone, and they've essentially set the price that we have to deal with.
So is that an error in procurement? I mean, are we wasting time here, or?
I think it's likely due to a CDL driver shortage because of the pandemic and people staying home from work.
Do we know that?
I don't know if there's any way to fully evaluate that from our end. I don't think it's an error in procurement. I think it's, we put out the advertisement, we get the bids that we get, and it is what it is.
They just said it hasn't been bid.
It gets bid out. It's just
It
we've only
does get
gotten
bid
one
out.
bidder.
It's just that we haven't had competitive bidding. We've had one bidder that's provided a price. Fortunately, that service provider provides outstanding service, but it's still a very expensive price compared to what things were historically. So what we can't tell is if this is a market correction or if there's a multitude of factors playing into this. Right now, we're into year 2 of a 3-year contract. We could choose to not execute the 3rd year of the 3-year contract, but we'd be rolling the dice that we would get competitive bidding if we put it out to bid again in place of year 3 of the existing contract. Does that make sense? There's no way to guarantee that we'll get 2, 3, 4, 5 bidders. We do try to promote this. It is publicly advertised. There are, this is just wastewater. How many treatment plants are there in the Commonwealth? I should know this off the top of my head, but I don't. There's at least 18 grade 7 plants, which is what we are, that's bigger, more complex treatment plants. So what I would like to do personally is to do more of a survey of my peers for the larger treatment plants and see how they're handling this service and see if they're experiencing the same thing that we're experiencing. Well, they're 25 cubic yard roll-offs. We do 3, when we process solids, we're generating 3 of those bins per day. And the graphic I have on the screen right now is showing you the Fitchburg landfill. And that's a approximate 8-mile traveled one-way distance from the east plant to the solid waste landfill. So 16 miles round trip. And I think it says 12 minutes travel time one way.
Is it uneven how often they pick up? Or is it
I think it's fairly consistent. I mean, they're not showing up purely on response. We're not setting their schedule, show up at time X, time Y, and time Z on 3 times a day. But I would have to defer that to my superintendent of treatment. So if we were to take this over, we do not have the type of hauling truck that is being used. And I've got a photograph of a typical truck on the screen right now. This is a roll-off truck used by French, WL French, the service provider. And here's a photograph of the typical roll-off bins that we would use, the 25 cubic yard bins. So the name of the game on this service is dependability, reliability, consistency. We can't have something not working and have it shut down the operation. So a new truck of this type will range anywhere from $185,000 to $240,000. There are used trucks as well, and we wouldn't be supportive of a used truck as the primary truck where we need dependability and reliability. We would need redundancy in case the primary truck were to go out of service or need something that would take a number of days. We can't go without service. And what we don't think and what we don't believe can happen is to have an on-call hauling contract of this type. It just doesn't lend itself well to this type of service and this type of need, where trucks and drivers can be on standby notice to come in and provide the service for us while we can't do it ourselves. I have to thank our soon-to-be new colleague, Mark, from Leominster DPW. Mark was gracious enough to provide us a job description for the truck driver of the type of truck that would be used for this type of service. So we've got a job description, and I was able to put that together with some of our own job descriptions. And there's a lot of similarity with our sewer crew operators. Our sewer crew operators have CDLB licenses, and they have air brakes, and they have more credentials and requirements than just that. But that would pre-qualify them to be able to perform this service. However, I can't steal those people away from the jobs that they're doing to do this task. We would need to bring someone on to do this task, and then in the event that that person was sick, had a vacation day, whatever reason, child conference with the teachers, whatever, we would need someone to step in and perform that role. So on a short-term basis, I think that our sewer crew personnel could step into this role, but we would still need to bring a person on of this type. So based on the where this person would kind of fit into our local 39 union matrix, it would be a grade 4 on our current CBA, and our most current CBA year is fiscal year 20, so that tells you it's a little bit dated, where we've been trying to go through contract negotiations with that contract, but there's been a number of issues that have stalled that process. However,
A kind of middle-of-the-road hourly rate for this type of person, this driver, would be about $23 per hour. When you do the math on that for the year, that works out to approximately $50,000 per year. Now, one important point with this, I mentioned major holidays versus something that's not a major holiday. So how we define that, there's actually, I think there's 13 existing holidays that we currently have that City of Fitchburg observes, the major holidays. And I use that term because on a major holiday, the landfill is closed. They're not allowing us to deliver products, so we don't do a sludge operation on those days. Those major holidays are New Year's Day, Memorial Day, 4th of July, Labor Day, Thanksgiving Day, Christmas Day. We also have 7 non-major holidays or minor holidays, days that the landfill is actually operating, but they're holidays that normal personnel of the City of Fitchburg would be observing. That's Martin Luther King Day, President's Day, Patriots Day, Juneteenth, which is a brand-new holiday that we just observed for the first time this calendar year. Columbus Day, Veterans Day, and day after Thanksgiving. So these are all holidays that we would have to have a driver performing service, so they'd be performing overtime rate pay. So obviously that would upwardly affect the annual salary for the subject person. We would have to purchase these bins. I'm not sure if these bins could be leased. Go ahead, Mike.
Maybe just try to get us to a place where we need to be. Is it probably just prudent to have you come back with a proposal and tell us what the cost is going to be to do that?
I could do that. In fact, I've got some information that I'm still waiting to receive. I've not yet received pricing proposals on bins. I haven't had a chance to talk to a customer who's bought these trucks to see what their average annual O&M costs.
We're not like in a hurry, right? We have a contract, we're paying for it right now, and you can come back with a proposal for us.
Well, ultimately, the council's delegated this to the commission, so I'll prepare this as I'm taking a business case type review on this approach. There's some concerns that I have with this that I think I'll mention now and will be incorporated into that report as well. We only have 3 more years life on the landfill. The health director, Steve Curry, is estimating that the landfill will reach its capacity and have to close in July of 2024. That's concern number 1, 3 years of this type of operation, and then something else would have to happen. I don't have a disposition site that's closer than this landfill, so it would have to go a further distance. So that's concern 1. There's regulatory concerns I have also. PFAS is a subject that's kind of bubbling up and percolating. It could very well be that we test our biosolids and it's unacceptable for disposal at the Fitchburg landfill. That's just a hypothetical possibility. They could shut us off on that basis, and then we would have to find another disposition site to send this material. This is a necessary evil on a part of activated sludge wastewater treatment, these types of solids. So they have to be managed in a sustainable way. I'm sorry.
Not to throw a monkey wrench in this, but I saw an ad in the newspaper where I think it was being held at Westminster, where there was some request to investigate allowing more to be brought to that landfill. Do you guys know anything about that?
To Fitchburg, Westminster?
Yes.
I haven't heard anything from health, and I'm using health as my source of information.
So again, I see where you're going. If it's going to close in 3 years, it doesn't sound like the investment's there. But is it going to close in 3 years? Because
What's the pace of material going to go to that? Is it going to go up? Is it going to go down? Is it going to stay steady? It's a volumetric estimation. There's only so much capacity, and it's very, very difficult to get site assignments for
expansions, either horizontally or vertically, that adds extra volumetric capacity.
And I don't know exactly what it was, if it was to expand it or if it was to increase the tonnage that Waste Management presently brings in so they can fill it quicker.
I think no matter what, you're gonna see that close, there's a lot of opposition to the whole town and stuff, so.
It's one of those things that it's just a matter of time. You know, it's a math equation with these volumetric landfills. We're hoping to divert more and more organics away from landfill disposals, and hypothetically, that could include biosolids. That's not screenings, that's not grit from my aerated grit tanks. This would be the blended primary sludge and secondary sludge. We're still hopeful, and we're pursuing a procurement process for anaerobic digestion to be sited at the West Plant. That's not dead, it's just lingered very slowly, largely because of COVID reasons.
Jeff, are you going to present us with a conclusion of your report on this tonight, or is this?
Well, I don't have all the information, so
Okay.
my thought process was to open up the issue and to kind of show you the basic issues of concern, but I don't have all my information yet necessary to provide something final.
Yeah, but it
A lot
seems,
of this comes down to risk, too. Now we're going to be taking on risk and liability. If the system fails, now we don't have a vendor that can throw in another truck, another driver. Now it's entirely on us to sustain this. And it's a temperamental type of operation where we can't shut it down and not process sludge, because that would wreak havoc with the treatment process.
Jeff, I agree with everything you're saying. But it seems to me, just to the numbers you've given us so far, and the challenges that we might be facing, it seems hard for me to believe that we're going to say, yes, let's go and buy this truck and hire this person.
Well,
So it seems to me our obligation to the city council is that we examine this, but I'm kind of thinking your conclusions are going to be plug in the numbers and here's what it costs, and is the risk worth it or
I think I know where
not?
this is going, but I haven't done the full due
Yeah.
diligence in
Okay.
order to
Yeah. Yeah.
present my full case.
Yeah, and I'm not, and to be honest with you, I'm not sure that we need to go through each individual number. I think we can look at the bottom line number and say, is the risk worth it or not? You're doing a lot of work. I know you're doing a lot of work, but I'm not. I think our responsibility is to look at this from a, from your conclusion point.
Worsening scenario, if we were to need to transport this a further distance, now we're talking about a fleet of vehicles and a fleet of drivers. So now you're multiplying $60,000 times however many employees, and now you need more vehicles plus redundancy in case something mechanically goes wrong.
It would seem logical that you're going to be looking at this and you say, right now, we're being told we've got 3 years on this, on the waste facility. It seems very, very difficult to believe that the payback is going to be less than 3 years. My sense is your report is going to be a little easier than every one of these numbers.
Right, I'll try to produce reasonable disclosures.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, according to, happened to be up in New Hampshire, looking at a piece of land that goes to New Hampshire. Dalton, New Hampshire is a huge, gigantic landfill. You know how far away Littleton is for Gowers?
Yeah.
Yards out of
Well,
it.
Massachusetts trash.
These are 25 yards. 25? These are 25 yards.
They said that, according to our, said all, one of the states, Massachusetts remaining landfill is going to be closed by 2030, so.
Yeah.
There's going to be, whether Jeff's waste or anything else is going to be a huge issue that I think it's going to be difficult to have to, estimate what's going to happen, 4 or 5 years.
Yeah. It seems odd that we'd be investing in a new truck that's capable of driving 12 miles when we need to go 300. But we have an obligation to report back, but I don't know.
Because it's a petition, I would imagine that the commission would render a recommendation
Yes,
to the city council.
I think when you give us a report, I think that'll be very easy for us to have a motion and make a recommendation.
Yeah, the states and locals are landfill.
I think it pushes us further towards investigating, biosolids at the West Plant a little bit more than trying to do this all in-house.
No. Right.
I mean, we can easily lament the fact that we don't have an incinerator anymore, but we'd still have ash to dispose of at that point, plus something else that's much more costly and difficult to maintain.
Yep.
Moving on in the wastewater agenda, the third major group is construction projects updates, and I'm a little bit out of order here. I'm just going to speak from something that's completed to something that's in progress to something that we're preparing to undertake. Mm-hmm. So up on the screen, I've got the Highview Street project, and this particular project may be a little bit difficult to see on the screen. There's a yellow line. Ultimately, we had a little over 1,000 feet of 8-inch sewer main that was a concern because of its condition. It's got an unorthodox alignment that you don't normally see, and you don't usually like to see, and there's a reason when you see something like this as to why it is. There's a ledge up the yin-yang up there, so they made a conscious decision not to fight through ledge that was basically just underneath asphalt, and they kicked it out through private properties. So rather than incur a lot of extra costs to relocate it back into the roadway and then have to do a whole bunch of roadway restoration as well, we chose to keep it in its current alignment and use a combination of trenchless technology techniques, which is cured-in-place pipe installation, and the cured-in-place pipe is the yellow that you see. That's in excess of 700 feet of CIPP cured-in-place pipe, so you're doing that as trenchless work. There's a little bit of disturbing of lawns that we had to take care of, but that's all been restored. At the very top of the job, what looks like a dock line, that's the limit of what we had to do as open cut replacement. So that's 8-inch PVC we did as open cut replacement sewer. That's approximately 250 feet. The project went very well, I think. It was very good dealing with the contractor. I don't think we had much in the way of significant issues with constituents. We tried to get out ahead of that. We had a neighborhood meeting in advance of the project kickoff. So overall, I think the project went very well, and it was a success. We've just finished up the last bit of work in the month of July, and we're looking to tie it off with the contractor with the final payment requisition. The next project I want to talk about is the in-progress CSS project. In my time with the city, we did CSS 2B, 3C, 4D, Beach Hazel. Now this is the fourth sewer separation project in my time with the city, and we did have CSS 1, 2, 3 that took place back in the 2000s. That was the city's first major CSS project that took place largely in the college area, in Blossom Street area, that sort of area of the city. This image you're looking at right here, we were doing a notification to residents because we were going to go into a very inconvenient portion of the project, and this was working in Water Street. Obviously, it's a major artery into and out of the downtown, and we had to do very challenging construction within a relatively short distance. It doesn't sound like a lot, 350 feet, but under these circumstances, we were down in excess of 20 feet at the beginning of the work at First Street, and then it got slightly shallower as we were progressing our way towards Walnut as we were going north. We had to install a brand new drain as a new utility. We were also installing sewer. We had buried gas. We had buried 2 water mains, I think, at least, if not more than 2. So there was a lot going on with this project, so it took longer than we were hoping that it would. When we sent out this advance notification, and we actually had a ward meeting Ward 1 Councilor Bernie Schultz was kind enough to invite us to his ward meeting that was held in this room, and it was fairly well attended. So we were briefing the public as much as we could through different avenues, and we did use Code Red as well. Social media, we used that. We tried to get information out in a number of different ways. We had hoped that this work would wrap up by the end of August, but it did not. Today, I was just out on site this morning, and I learned from the contractor that all the drain work and sewer work within this Water Street stretch has been completed, with the exception of some catch basin lateral tie-ins to drains. He's hopefully scheduling the paving work for Water Street in this work zone to take place on Thursday of next week, a week from tomorrow. So I'm hopeful that means that the week after, we may be able to reopen Water Street to through traffic. And that would be getting us into more side street work, which is, less impactful to the public at large. I'm sure you all know from your travels throughout the city in this time, it's that little yellow patch right here. And I'll just go into that. It's a very short stretch right where my hand is, where now the arrowhead is. That's Regulator 039. And this is First Street right here. So this overall run is about 350 feet. When we were preparing this agenda last week, I thought we still had a sizable amount of work to do, and I was very happy this morning to find out that that work that we thought we still had has actually been completed, or mostly complete. On this side, this is drain that we still had to complete a week from today, and then this smaller thickness line in longer length, that was the sewer that we still had to complete 1 week from 1 week ago today. So that work that you're looking at on the screen has been completed. So we're kind of buttoning up this piece of Water Street, which I'm very happy about. We have our contractor providing periodic look-ahead schedules so that we know where he's going to be in certain time frames. So you can see the holiday is the Labor Day there with no dark gray boxes. So we'll be getting into some easement work off of Laurel Street. That's over by Zeta's Pizza. We've got an issue with sewer there that's on the verge of heading down the embankment towards the railroad tracks. That was a little bit tough to deal with to get the access rights to be able to perform that work. And then also, we will be having Green Mountain back. We have been doing this CIPP work as a part of this project as well in areas where we could use that technology as a rehab. Any questions on this active in progress project right now?
Questions? Good.
Oh, go ahead, Mike.
Just a quick question. We had a major rain event last week, right?
Yes.
Are we seeing major improvements based on all the work that you've done?
Well, you can't notice something like that on an individual event. What you notice, if you as Rick likes to say, if you take your 30,000-foot view, what I hear is from my operators at the treatment plant and what they see coming into the headworks and how a rain event performs in terms of the inflow. Back in the day, before a lot of these improvements were made, we would have an inflow and the flow would come in and it would stay high, and it would stay high for days and days and days. Now, typically what happens is we would have a spike and then it would dissipate fairly quickly, so there's a quick response. Ultimately, we're going to see less and less effect from this. We've already closed one regulator permanently as a part of this project, Regulator 007. It's not the biggie in this particular project. The biggie is that 039 regulator, and we can't just close it and then, to heck with what's upstream of that. We actually have to coordinate the closure or permanent closure of that structure with the work that's upstream and contributing to it. So we will be
performing its final permanent closure, I believe, prior to mid-year, probably in the spring of '22. And that's the biggie.
Did we have any overflow at that last meeting?
Oh, you bet we did. This last event, which was the remnants of the hurricane, was not as bad as a 30-minute rain event we had back in July, I think. And we had an inch and a half of rain in about 30 minutes. And I think Nick's better at this than I am. That was somewhere between a 40-year storm and a 50-year storm, something like that.
Yeah, I think it was somewhere between a 25-year and a 50-year storm. A 50-year, 30-minute storm, not a 50 or 24-hour storm. So,
well, we could see extraordinary evidence of that afterwards, throughout the city. We definitely got hammered with that event. This was over a greater period of time, even though there was more rain probably with this last event. It was stretched out, so we didn't have the same adverse impacts throughout the city. On that event, I think, where we had the inch and a half of rain in 30 minutes, I think all of our existing remaining CSO regulators activated, which is a very unusual occurrence for us.
yeah, so they won't be able to shut down that regulator that he's talking about until the work upstream is complete next spring. So that we won't see any immediate benefits. We won't see that until next spring when that work is complete and they can actually shut that regulator down. Once that does happen, because it's one of the larger ones that's part of this project, we should see a noticeable difference at the plant, like he's saying, that we've noticed from past projects. We should see more of that come this spring once we're able to finally shut down that one regulator.
This has been a long road, this overall program. Some individuals have referred to this as a project, meaning everything as a project. We've been moving in a state of progression in improving effects, both for discharges from regulators as well as for the treatment plant. This is the reason why in our wastewater management plan we were prioritizing this type of work, because you got a double benefit. You got a benefit at the plant, you got a benefit in the system. We're renewing assets, we're preventing discharges of wastewater into the river. So we're prioritizing that above tertiary treatment, which is the polishing treatment to get us reliably down beneath 0.2 ppm phosphorus. In other parameters, it has beneficial effects too, but primarily it's for phosphorus, that tertiary treatment. So this leads us into what's coming next, and we can't do a project and then start a new project once the last one's complete, because if I did that, I wouldn't be starting this until
I
October.
was only asking about overflow last week.
I know, I'm on a roll. My point is,
Trying to get Rick home for dinner.
we've got a lot of work to do before 2030. The last deadline date in the consent decree is December 31st, 2030, and that's tied to the sewer system. So we need to be 100% separated by then. That sounds like a long time. Here we are, September of 2021. What's the big rush, Jeff? Well, we've got to do a whole bunch of large projects, and this next one's going to be the very biggest one we've done, probably as big as almost all of them put together. This next project, we're going to be separating in excess of 5 miles of combined sewers. We're going to be permanently closing 4 very active CSO regulators in this downtown project. So when that's done, you're definitely going to see positive beneficial outcomes, both for discharges and also at the treatment plant. Much more so than this project. I'm not trying to minimize this project that we're currently undertaking, but this next project is going to be big, and this is going to probably fix your road too, Mike, so you'll be happy about that.
It's just too bad the last 4 or 5 mayors spent the rent. We would have had this done.
Well, I'm still hoping that the city fathers see to it that we get some ARPA money to help defray these costs, because these project costs, as you all know, capital projects is what drives sewer rates. So if we had relief from sources other than the pockets and pocketbooks of ratepayers, that would be to their benefit, greatly to their benefit. We've gotten an allocation to the city, which is a finite amount. There's another allocation to the Commonwealth that they haven't figured out how they want to divvy up yet, or the timeline within which they'll divvy up. So we're hoping that we can get some of that money as well, both for water and for wastewater.
That'll help bring the rates down.
Well, it's rare when these sorts of things happen. You hear a lot about unfunded mandates and the ratepayers' effect. Well, now the money truck, the Brinks truck is backed up, and are we not going to benefit the ratepayers? That's just my perspective, looking out for my constituency. On the screen right now it's a little bit difficult to see, so forgive me. This is the lime green, if you will, if you can differentiate colors there. That's the overall project footprint, anticipated project limits of the downtown project. That's those 4 active CSO regulators and 5 miles of combined sewers. You may have noticed in driving around the city, we've got a whole bunch of dig safe markings, and the reason for that is we're doing the preliminary investigations through geoprobes and borings to know the subsurface, where the bedrock is, to help in the design of the project. We'll be going into SSES type investigations as well, which is smoke testing, dyed water testing, property inspections for sources of I&I. This is all going to set the scope of what we need to do and where we need to do it. And that's going to allow the engineer, and Weston and Sampson is our engineer, both for this investigative phase of the work as well as the design. It's going to allow them to do that work. So this is in progress right now while the construction project is still going on. The current project is set to conclude its final construction days in September of 2022. We think that the contractor is a little bit ahead of pace, so he could come in ahead of schedule, but that gives you some sense of the timeline there. And really, we're at the very beginning of this process with field investigations, so we haven't gotten our way into design yet. I don't think that we'll have this ready for bid until probably the fall of next year at the earliest. That's just an estimate on my part. Well, after that, we've got a couple small areas, and we may try to merge 2 small areas, even though they may be geographically disparate, because that was kind of how the first separation project happened, 1, 2, 3. There were a couple areas of the city that were in the same project, as was 2B, 3C for that matter. Well, the very last one, we've got a regulator on the trunk that's in a right-of-way off of Water Street, so it's basically right a stone's throw away from the river. That's the very last one, and we can't separate that one until we've done the upstream work, so that would be the very last project we do. After this big one, it would either be 2 or 3 more projects. If we could merge 2 areas into a single bid project, then we could do it in 2 projects. I don't think we could do the remaining work in a single project. Any questions on this project that's in the works?
Questions?
Main Street area project?
Good.
With that, that's the last of the show and tell. I just had some miscellaneous updates. Back in June, I was part of our workforce webinar, Where Will Our New Operators Come From? Innovative Approaches. That was a useful webinar to be a part of because I was able to do some networking, and I ended up meeting and talking a lot more with the head of Excel Conservation Corps out of Boston. This is a training organization that trains inner city youth, underemployed or unemployed young people. These are older than high school kids usually, but typically in the early 20s. They get trained for wastewater treatment, and they take their grade 3 wastewater treatment plant operator examinations. So this program would generate a graduate that would be a qualified worker to come in as a wastewater treatment plant operator. That's my lower level of the 2 levels of treatment plant operator at the East Plant. Now, this is going to become important because I've got a retirement of that position coming on in October of this year, and then another one coming up, I believe, in February of next year. So we need to start tapping into resources and how to find this type of talent. We were fortunate to bring in a senior treatment plant operator who happened to be a Fitchburg resident, but he was an Upper Blackstone clean water employee who had passed his grade 6 examination, and we were able to hire him in June, taking the place of someone who left us to join Marlboro. So that was a positive outcome. It's very difficult to fill those higher level positions. We did write a letter of support to NUIPIC. That's a training organization for clean water predominantly. They were submitting for grant funding for women in apprenticeships in non-traditional occupations. So we submitted a letter of support for that. We have staffed up our sewer collection crew in a better way. We had created a new organization of the crew, which is a six operator crew in sewer collection, so that we have a general foreman, a working foreman, and then 4 sewer system operators. 2 of those 4 is something that we call a sewer stormwater operator that can perform part of their services for the streets division and stormwater work, and the general fund would be paying for those hours that they worked in support of the streets division. So it gives us a little bit more latitude and flexibility in how DPW handles things. We're hoping to advertise and post a 6th position, the last vacancy we have, and it would be one of those sewer and stormwater operator positions. Just general concern, I think I share a lot of staffing concerns with John and our peers across the state. I have been trying to network with a lot of the technical trade high schools, the vocational schools, Monty Tech, Blackstone, Worcester Technical High School, to try to have a resource to fill positions. I think those trade schools would lend themselves well towards our mechanical entry-level position, which is called an assistant mechanic position. Aside from that, that's the only real entry-level position that would be applicable to the trades, because everything else requires much more experience, including the electrical repair person who's a licensed journeyman electrician. So we're trying to do what we can to have a pipeline for new talent as these vacancies come up. We also submitted our consent decree semi-annual report, submitted it on time, and last thing I'd like to mention before we wrap, I know Jeff's a long-winded type of guy, we have had a successful year number 4 of our rain barrels program, where we sold in 155 rain barrels this year, bringing us to a total of 500 rain barrels over the total 4-year program. That's all I had. Any questions?
Very good. Any questions for Jeff?
Yeah, the number of retirements in water, wastewater is crazy the last few months. I think it's, dealing with the pandemic, or maybe they're, their health, they're fearful of that. I don't know what it is, but it's amazing how many people are,
It's always a challenge.
One of the biggest challenges we face.
Is there any other business? Let's see, the next meeting will be Wednesday, October 13th, and I guess we will meet here again. Can't wait till we get rid of these masks.
Any feedback on how this went that we should change? We could ask for a couple extra
Fix the
microphones.
acoustics, but
Well, that's a tough fix.
yeah. No. They need to put some fabric or something on the wall.
Yeah.
But if there's no other business, I'll accept a motion to adjourn. We are adjourned. Thank you.